Okay, we're going to start. Good morning. I'm happy to be here again for our third session. This question I ask, how intelligent are you, is being asked very rhetorically. In my first presentation, I mentioned that we human beings are intelligent in a manner that is quite different from other animals. Now, the word intelligent is loaded with meaning. It is a complex word. Intelligence is a very complex word. It encompasses many things. It encompasses creativity. It encompasses our capacity to solve problems. It encompasses imagination. It encompasses our capacity to connect things from the past to the future in a way that we do not see being done by any other animal. So the word intelligent is being asked in that context. Now, I will lead up to this question and show you how we have addressed this over many thousands of years. I will go back to tell you a personal story. I came from India at the age of 21 to Canada to study. Before I came, I was very much part of a culture which is very hierarchical. And there is a lot of emphasis placed on respect. Respect for the teachers, for the elders, for the priests, for the people who are in the neighborhood who are elders. And this sense of respect is very strong. So when I came to Canada, my first cultural shock was to learn this expression called learn to respect the child. This was a new idea. I had never imagined that one learns to respect the child. All we had learned for 21 years, I had learned how to respect the elders, never learning to respect the child. And this idea led me to understand the different kind of emphasis on education. What is it that we learn to respect the child? That the child is a human being, that he and she has emotions, that she is to be respected and recognized and listened to with full attention, and that it is not gestures of respect that we do for our elders that defines our respect for the child. It is our paying full attention to the child and recognizing her special intelligence and her special creativity. So it was a really quite remarkable learning experience for me, as it is for many other people. That child is not just a little machine or just a little animal, that it has, even very early on at the age of 6 months and 1 year, it has emotions, and it is growing, and it needs to be recognized and respected. And so it was really quite an amazing step forward for me. Now, a few years ago, in the University of Harvard, the president of the university, Dr. Somers, a very well-known professor of economics, he made a statement which riled the university greatly. He said the women professors in the university are not cut out to be great scientists, that innately they are not cut out to be great scientists and mathematicians. And the women in the University of Harvard and many other universities all over the world were very deeply insulted by it. How dare you suggest that women are not innately cut out to be great scientists? Now, many years ago, 50 years ago, if some man said it, nobody objected to it. But these days, in the universities in Canada, USA, many universities in Europe, there are many women students studying than men. And to suggest that they are not cut out for certain discipline seems very insulting. And so all universities then got very much riled by this statement, to the extent that the president had to resign his position. He is not fit to be the president of one of the most distinguished universities in the world if he thinks that women are not cut out. So this idea, what is innately in certain groups of people, are black people cut out to be great physicists? Are Chinese cut out to be great mathematicians? Are Jewish people cut out to be great musicians? So this idea, what is innate and what is environmental? I referred to it a good deal yesterday. So I'll bring it again, because when it comes to intelligence, these questions become very important. Now, it came again last year in the context in India. There was elections for the new prime minister of the country, and the man who was contesting and who became the prime minister, Mr. Modi, was a person from very low social status. He used to sell tea when he was a young boy of 10, 12 at the railway stations in India. So as one member of the opposition suggested, how can a tea vendor have the capacity to be the prime minister of the country? Now this riled up the people everywhere. I mean, a person suggesting that just because you were a tea vendor, or you came from a low social status, or you were poor, therefore you do not have the intelligence, or you do not have quite the right preparation to be the politician and the prime minister of the country. This itself became a rallying cry for this man who became the prime minister. So I mentioned these various cases because all through there is this sense that runs in our history of civilization. Who is cut out to do what things? Are people of certain elite classes, certain ruling classes, certain particular ethnicity, particular color, particular religion? Do they have only the status to do these things and not the others? Now, I teach at the University of Toronto, and I was a student. I did my PhD from Toronto. There is a college in Toronto, very famous college called Trinity College. And for many years, the only students in Trinity College you saw when I came to do my PhD there, I was not a student at Trinity College, but I saw at Trinity College that the only students there were white students. And then when a few years ago, my daughter joined the college, and when I went to the first meeting of the parents and the students and the faculty, I saw there was no white student. I said, this is incredible. What has happened? This has happened. The only people who were there, students who were there, were from China, from Malaysia, from India, from Bangladesh, and it seemed amazing. So I asked one of my colleagues, friends, who had been teaching there for many years, I said, what happened? He says, well, the students, these white students don't qualify anymore. These are the students from China and India who are qualifying. So you see there's a big change occurring. Who is intelligent and who can do what? And it's occurring all over the world. And it is in some ways questioning some of our prejudices, some of our concerns about racial superiority. Now, we've been concerned about improving our gene pool. How can we make, as we understand more about genetics in the last 100 years or so, there has been concern that we have been able to bring a better breed animals, horses, dogs, bulls. Is it possible to better breed human beings? And what is this better breeding? So one of the phenomena that happened in the beginning of the 20th century was called eugenics. And eugenics it was actually started, the idea was started, better breeding for use of genes to make better human beings. And the idea was started by one of the cousins of Charles Darwin in 1880s. This idea caught on. And almost all countries, and many people of many persuasions, of people on the left, people on the right, people who were socialists, and people like George Bernard Shaw, they all supported the idea that people who are enfeebled, who are in psychiatrist hospitals, who are not quite fit, perhaps they should not be allowed to reproduce. And therefore, so that the next generation will be better. They'll be better in health, better in brain, better in their social status, and so on. Now, it went on in many countries. It was practiced a great deal in USA. It was practiced in Canada and practiced all over Europe. But it misfired in 1930s when, under the Nazis, under Hitler, it went on really crazy because then he chose to have only particular people of a certain race who were not allowed to reproduce and so on. So eugenics became a dirty word. Now, but there are now some people some biologists, people like Richard Dawkins, who are suggesting perhaps it's time to revisit this idea, because it's time we can now revisit, look at the genes, and is it possible for us to produce people, children, who are specially gifted in certain areas. Let's see. Have designer babies, people who are great geniuses in mathematics. And his contention, Richard Dawkins' contention, is that we spend so much time and effort in colleges and universities all over the world to train people in mathematics, to make them good mathematicians, or scientists, or architects, or musicians. Is it possible, rather than spending all that amount of time and effort, that we could manipulate the genes and make a person, right from the very beginning, have a special gift for architecture, special gift for music? Choosing who's going to decide it? Well, the parents will decide it. And then who else would decide? Maybe the society needs more lawyers, perhaps, or more politicians, or more architects, or more musicians. So the idea is being very much toyed. So it's not just genetic manipulation or genetic pool of the animals or in agriculture, but in human beings. And so this idea is very much there. How can we have designer babies? And particularly designer babies in which perhaps some of the negative attributes of a certain criminal behavior, or certain depressive behavior, or certain mental diseases, or certain diseases of the body, that perhaps they can be eliminated right from the word go, from the very beginning. So we have, I'm coming to this idea of intelligence in a few steps. Now, one of the great steps in science is that we learn to measure nature. And a scientific discovery or scientific truth is almost always established by making a measurement. So at the end, we have a number. We say, what is the blood pressure? It is not quite enough to say, oh, I have very high blood pressure. No, how high is it? Give me the number. And then we say, it's not enough to say, oh, it's a hot day, but give me the right temperature. What is the temperature? Is it 75 or is it 62? So we want precision. And same way, time. So it's not enough to time. You know, many societies which not had watches for quite some time, people were rather casual about attending a meeting or coming for dinner. You invite somebody, come for dinner at 8 o'clock, and they arrive at 10. You say, well, what happened? He says, well, this is Indian time, or this is Greek time, or this is Spanish time. You know, your time is not really such important. You dropped in. So this idea of time being measured precisely, and to the extent that we know it's microseconds, nanoseconds. So and then we talk of light years. So precision of time. Same way measuring a space. And so the idea that nature has to becomes precise, becomes scientifically and objectively presented through exactitude and precision. These are very important things in science. And every science tries to be as precise in their observations as possible. Of course, the great triumph of the 20th century, first half of the 20th century, was in physics. And it's called the first half of the century, 20th century, is called the century of physics. And its achievements are extraordinary in physics. The structure of the atom, the structure of the nucleus, the splitting of the nucleus, the discovery of the new energy, the atomic energy. So many, many triumphs. And so many other sciences, biology particularly, and psychology in particular, were very envious of physics. How can they be so precise? We can't be so precise about things. You know, we just saw, some of you saw the film about Stephen Hawking, the film called One Great Equation, or Unified Equation. So really, in a way, it is possible to have an equation, or the idea of one single equation that explains everything in physics, but it's not possible in biology. Any living organism is not possible. And it's a bit of a strange anomaly, because we can predict how 10,000 years from now a solar eclipse will occur. We can predict when a lunar eclipse can occur 100,000 years from now. That's because the things do not change so much in such a short period of time. But you cannot predict what time you will get up in the morning. That's our free will. So the idea of biological system and psychological systems are different from physical systems. However, this fascination for measuring nature and precise and having precision and exactitude is very, very seductive. Let's go on. That we also do this grading. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for a long time in many universities in many parts of the world. And so I'm in the business of grading students and deciding how intelligent some student is as opposed to another student. We grade students, and I will come to it in a minute, how we grade. But certainly we grade, is it a 5-star hotel or a 3-star hotel? Is it a 2-star hotel? We grade countries in terms of their credit rating. We grade corporations and credit rating and efficiency, how efficient a particular system works. And transparency. Is there corruption in some societies more than other societies? So these days there's a transparency coefficient. You can just Google and find out what's the transparency in Bangladesh or Nigeria or compared to, say, Norway. And then there are new, this idea called Human Development Index, HDI. It was developed about 15 years ago. And until a few years ago, Canada used to be #1. And now sometimes in Norway or Sweden or Japan. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is the Human Development Index. And there are about 70 factors that go into deciding what society is better developed than other society. It's not one single factor. It says, well, the position of women, how free people are to worship or not to worship, or to go to one church or a temple or a mosque or not to go to any one of them. And then how safe the society is, how equal the society is, etc. There are about 70 factors. So, but the idea is that at the end of it says, Canada is 5.4, and USA, well, is 2.3, or Bangladesh is so. So all countries are graded in terms of Human Development Index. And now these days there is also Happiness Index. How happy people are in any society. Again, it's not one single number. It's a number at the end of it, but there are about 60, 70 factors that have been agreed upon by a group of people through United Nations, and then you have at the end Happiness Index. So how happy are people in Congo as opposed to in, say, Sweden or in Australia? So these are all ways of grading. So why am I bringing this? Because the idea is, as I said, in the academic world, we grade all the time. This is what I do. And students want. There was a time in some universities we tried saying no grades. So everybody gets the same marks. And then the students were complaining, no, if somebody didn't do any work and he gets or she gets the same mark as I do, and I've been working very hard, that's not fair. So we should have grading. And then we used to have earlier on grading in which the students would have, the names would be there, and the mark would be in front of it, and then we posted it in the public spaces, and then many students and many administrators said, that's not quite right. It is humiliating for people to see their names if they're getting C and D. And so we now have no names, just the number, their roll numbers and their grades, so that you just see but without any associate with the names. So we have tried many ways of deciding how to grade students, how to grade. And but now increasingly questions of how is it grading to be done only at the end of the exam after 8 months of classes? Is it to be done on basis of continuous work every week, every month, so that there is a better grading, better way of assessing the competence of the person? Now also, the new ways of asking, how students participate in a discussion, how good are they? And then what level of courtesy they have towards the other student who you do not agree with. So these are also ways now being assessed, how to assess a student's intellectual worth and academic worth, not just in terms of what mark he or she gets at the end of the class, but many other soft factors. And I call them, and they have been called, emotional intelligence. You see, this is a new idea that came about 25 years ago, that intelligence is not just intellectual intelligence, not just problem solving, but emotional intelligence, how you interact with your environment. It's not just the environment is making you, you are making the environment. And what is the environment? We are not anymore worried so much about fighting with the other animals for food. We now have animals as pets, but otherwise the other animals, they're either in zoo or we have controlled most of the big animals in the world. So, but what is the other environment? The other environment is the people. So how do we interact with the people, the other people? Some people of a different color, different religion, different food habits, different attitudes. How do we interact? How well we interact with them? That's all part of emotional environment. So they are our colleagues. And how good we build a team. And do we work with somebody who's a bit of a prima donna and who just thinks that she is the center of the world and everything has to move around her or around him? And how do you like to work with such a person? So there are many situations arise in which this person could be an absolutely brilliant person, but an impossible person to work with. And so nobody wants to be with him or her. And it's because he has a rather low emotional intelligence. And a person lacks serenity or does not work well under stress. So all these new factors are being talked about in terms of what is intelligence. And these are new. As I said, just last 25 years or so, this is saying our notion of intelligence is being broadened. To say that we are good workers, whether we are solitary or we're working in teams of 2 or 3 or 4, or working in a larger group of 1,000 people, or leading a nation of 10 million people, whatever. So we are now being asked again and again to define our personality in not just in single terms of what is intelligence, but in other terms as well. Now, the question comes with, can we also have qualitative numbers, precision, about things that are not easy to quantify? Can we have a number for beauty? Can we say, oh, she's beautiful, number 9.3? Or in the same way, about wisdom. Is there a wisdom quotient? Is there a generosity quotient? Is there can we put a value on worth? This person is worth so much. You can say, well, his money worth is so much, but it is his other worth, is how much other worth is there, and how valuable a person is in the family, or in the community, in a church, in a temple, in a school, in a college. So this notion of worth is not just in economic terms, but also in other terms, social terms, cultural terms. And same way, this notion of trust. Can we have a trust quotient? Of course, we talk of a breach of trust, or somebody is very trustworthy, is not very trustworthy. All these words are qualitative words, but can they be quantified? As we do, all of nature is being quantified. Can we quantify these things? Well, I say all this because number 2 here is intelligence. Well, somebody about 100 years ago said we should quantify intelligence. We should quantify intelligence. And that's how it came about. Now, intelligence, there are many people who have achieved remarkable things in the history, human history, who were, from many points of view, were not terribly qualified. They were not necessarily well-schooled. They didn't do very well in school. Many of them dropped out of school. We have a great example of Bill Gates, who was just never, he dropped out from Harvard University in second year or third year. And we have people like great inventors, Thomas Edison. One of my favorite is Michael Faraday. I mention his name because he's one of the great scientists and physicists, 19th century, in England, Victorian England. And this man was an amazing human being, an amazing man, amazing character. He did not go to any school. But what he did do, he learned to read, and he was a book binder. So many of the great scientists who were physicists and chemists working in England, in London, in the 19th century, they were writing their books and they're writing their papers, and these books being bound. And this young man, Michael Faraday, was binding their books. and he was so drawn to reading them. So sometimes he knew more about their books than their authors knew themselves. And so he got all his knowledge through reading the books of other people. And then finally, he was recognized, his own genius was recognized. But never went to any school, never had any, came from a very low-class society, many times was shunned by even some of his own colleagues later on. So I bring all this example because now we have many people who are explorers of the mind and who are entrepreneurs and are communicators who are not necessarily come from with great grades, but who contributed a great deal to their field. I mean, one of the great men of science, Charles Darwin, his own father was said, this boy will come to nothing. He's useless. And that's why he said, let him go off on a ship with his cousin. And so at the age of 23, he was shipped off, literally shipped off. And those 3 years that he spent, well, he showed his genius and what he came up with. And same way, the man who invented genetics, Gregory Mendel, he was a priest, a monk, and not trained at all in science. So I bring all these examples because there are many situations we find intelligence, creativity expresses itself in a manner which surprises us, and which is not necessarily schooled creativity. It's not academic creativity, but creativity nevertheless. Now comes measuring human intelligence. It started about 1915, about 100 years ago. And why did it start? Well, science has a very interesting story. There's always a background story which makes it fascinating. And the psychology as a discipline of knowledge were always confused. Are they arts, are they humanities, or are they science? Because if they're science, they have to be precise. If they're arts, well, you can be more qualitative and expressive and imaginative. If they're humanities, you can be even more qualitative. And so there was a lot of envy among us, the psychologists, of sciences that were precise. So out of this sense came this, if only we could measure intelligence. And this idea came, well, we will have a certain set of tests to be performed, and then see what people do with it, and they decide what number to give. So it came IQ, intelligent quotient. And when they started performing this test, you could see, very soon, one could see that a lot of these tests were really full of cultural prejudices. And a lot of black people in the USA, it started in USA, a lot of black people in USA were considered idiots. They scored so low. A lot of people who came from Eastern Europe, from Poland or Bulgaria. They were, again, really at the very low end of IQ. And so it was in a way to reinforce some of the things that are going on in the society. Who is smart, who's not smart? And it's easier to now, you have a number for you, you have 62 compared to 142. So you are an idiot. You're on the low end of it. So it's easy to justify your prejudices by a number. Now, human beings are a clever lot. We are rational beings in many ways. We are reasonable, we can be reasonable, but we are also rationalizing beings. We rationalize a lot of things by cleverness. We rationalize. So this is a way of rationalizing a certain prejudices that prevailed in the society. Now, there's a wonderful book I recommend to you very highly, written by one of the great writers who unfortunately died rather young, Stephen Jay Gould, called The Mismeasure of Man. He was a professor of paleontology at Harvard University and a historian of science. And he took on this whole strong attack on this idea of measuring intelligence. And his thesis idea was that really so much the way the tests were structured and the way they were performed was essentially so culturally bound that a person who did not go to school or who came from a certain kind of background, economically low background, that they could have no idea of scoring very high. Women scored very low, and black people scored very low. Eastern Europeans scored very low. Chinese scored very low. And so whole lot of people left. And so really it was a way of proving that the really smart people in the world are Europeans and Western Europeans. Now these days we're finding that's not quite true. There are smart people, different kind of smart people in other parts of the world. And so we say, well, what does it mean? So there's a new idea came up called multiple intelligences. Multiple intelligences. Now it's a wonderful idea, not very old. It was first presented by a professor, Gardner at Harvard University, called multiple. That we people, the student, a child, anybody, does not have only one kind of intelligence. There are at least 9 different kinds of intelligences. And one person could be very good in one and could be quite poor in the other. And the real trick for a teacher, for a parent, for a person who is more mature, for educators, for all of us, is to recognize what gift, what particular intelligence we have, the child has. For instance, you may know that many people who are absolutely wonderful actors on the stage, but when they take them off the stage, they're very awkward in speaking. They're just socially awkward. They don't know how to have a simple conversation. So they have no people skill, but they have wonderful skills on the stage. And then there are people who are wonderful mathematicians, great mathematicians, but very clumsy in sports. They couldn't, play any game of tennis. And then there are people who are wonderful athletes, but cannot, add 4 and 4 together. So you have different kind of intelligences. Now, in this particular case, he has Professor Gardner has come up with 9 ideas, 9 kinds of intelligences. And here I'll point out to you, take one at a time. Say 9 ways of knowing. The word knowing is again a loaded word. Knowing, how do we know something? But really, how to internalize and feel we can now work with it and interact with the environment effectively, creatively. So 9 ways of knowing. The first, verbal and linguistic. Some people are wonderful with words. They're gifted with words. They know how to write well. They know how to say it well. They're in literature, or writing reports, or writing speeches. So they have this particular gift, but not everybody does. Now, let me say something here. Sometimes people say we share so much of genetic pool with other animals. It is true. 98% is the same genetic alphabet we have as other animals, as so on. But the alphabet is not what defines our being. It is what we make with the alphabet. It's what sentences we make, what paragraphs we make. Shakespeare did not invent new alphabet. He used the same alphabet, English, same 26 letters. But he created new imagery and new literature. And that's why 400 years later, we adore his work. We think of him, what a great genius. So it's not just the alphabet we share with each other, but what we do with it, what sentences we make, what poetry we create, what prose we create. That makes all the difference. So some people with the same alphabet cannot write a decent, half-decent letter to their girlfriend, and the others can write a very seductive poem. All the difference it makes. So you have this verbal and linguistic skill. And sometimes it's used, you begin to recognize very early on, and other times you don't. One of my great people I admire greatly as a writer is a professor. He was a professor of anthropology at the University of Pennsylvania in USA, Professor Lauren Isley. He wrote wonderfully about nature and man's place in it. And he tells us that at the age of 11, he was in grade 5 or 6 in his school in USA. He was given an assignment, students were given an assignment to write about a certain experience with nature, and he wrote, and he read it out. And the whole class was mesmerized by its beauty. They said, my God, it's amazing. His observations are amazing. His use of words are amazing. But his teacher thought that this boy could not possibly have written this, that it must be stolen. It must have been written by somebody else, it's stolen. And she reprimanded him. He says, you are cheating. You did not write it. It is not yours. You cheated. And she humiliated him in front of the whole class. And he tells that for the next 30 years, he did not write a word. What a shame, because when he did write, it was absolutely magical, what he wrote. His books are absolutely magical. Of all writers in the world, he has influenced me more than anybody else. Absolutely magical. And I said to myself, What an amazing thing. A teacher can destroy, rather than recognizing the special gift a person has, you can destroy that gift by thinking that it is not his. So verbal and linguistic gift is a very important gift, and not everybody has it, but it is one of the ways of expressing intelligence. The second gift is logical, mathematical, and some kids are very good. You know, some just recognizing mathematics, they can be very shy, can be very introvert, and so on. Because mathematics is you create a world of your own. And but again, a person can be very good in mathematics and not be good at all in linguistics. So this Professor Gardner recognizes that this is the second kind of intelligence. This is as good an intelligence, as grand an intelligence as the first one. And then third one, visual and spatial, people who are just very good at seeing things and painting and recognizing, whether they're in architecture or designing, a visual gift. And then another one is bodily, athletic gift. I mean, a person who plays tennis, I mean, I play tennis, I watch great tennis players and say, amazing what they can do. Here is you're bound, this is where you play. And so your freedom is in a way bound, but in that boundaries, what a remarkable thing you can show in terms of volleying and playing the game. So this is a gift not everybody has, but those who have, you must recognize that this is a kind of intelligence, because a person is not just he or she is coordinating so many things and responding to the other person, and so there is a kind of a problem solving, if you like, in a broader sense of the word. So this gift again has been recognized as a kind of intelligence. So it is an intelligence, is an intelligence of the body. And then musical and rhythmical gift, and I go quickly, and gift of a naturalist, a person who sees things and sees patterns. That was the great gift of Charles Darwin. That was the great gift of many other people. I used to have a colleague at my university in Canada. He was a wonderful ecologist, wonderful ecologist. And in the fall time, in the autumn time, he used to lead many of us, including his colleagues, other professors, on a walk through the forest. And he would go only about 20 feet in 5 hours. He would walk only 20 feet. That was all we did, walk maximum 50 feet in 4 or 5 hours. But he made the whole world come alive. The whole world was there. And under the soil and the leaves here and the worm here and this water here, and we said, wow, this is mesmerizing. That how you see the whole world in a grain of sand. And here he made this world come true because he had the special gift of a naturalist gift, of seeing patterns which others don't see. He used to say, he says, people think the rule of the jungle means there is no rule. He says, only a foolish man would say that who does not understand the jungle. Because the jungle is an incredibly complex thing and is full of laws. And only a foolish person, a person who has never studied a jungle would say, there are no rules here, there are no laws here. It's a lawless thing. So a naturalist, that is a gift. And it's a special kind of intelligence. Same way, no, these two, people don't often think of it, but it's very crucial. Interpersonal gift. Some people are so good in relating to other people. If you ever aspired to be a politician, do you think you can be a politician without having interpersonal gifts? Or how to seduce people, how to believe that you're giving them a story that they're going to believe you. So interpersonal gifts, human gifts, relating to other people, whether you are a salesperson or you're a financial advisor or whatever, interpersonal gifts. This is a kind of intelligence. Not everybody has it. And some people aspire for it. Then the intrapersonal gift. You see, a person who has the capacity to reflect on his own psychological, philosophical, theological, religious ideas. And this is also a wonderful gift because it is a way of reflecting on many things that many other people don't have the gift for. And then really the ninth one here is existential. People who have great philosophical mind of wisdom, questions of meaning and purpose, and expressing it through fables and allegories in a manner the others understand. And we have great teachers, and Christ was a great teacher. Buddha was a great teacher. They're called teachers. And what makes them great teachers? Because they're really raising existential questions and say, well, do they therefore make sense to it? So these are all 9 different ways of intelligence. And they expressed it here. It's a much talked about. It has a great, this particular notion has been now become very important part of educational psychology in many countries. I don't know about Australia, but certainly it is so in USA, in Canada, much talked about. That how do we not recognize the special gift of the child? Because each child, each person has it, that has some more of one than the other. And sometimes a person can say, I have this gift, but I feel so sorry for myself that I don't have that gift. Even some people are so shy in some situations, but they're wonderful, great gift for mathematics, and so on. So in a way, people all beginning to recognize that they're not stupid, they're not unintelligent, they're just different kind of intelligence. And it's become, as I said, very much part of, this is John Howard Gardner. Important, it's not about how smart you are. It is about how you are smart. That's why the question that I put in my talk today, it says, how intelligent are you, or in what ways are you intelligent? So this is the question that Howard asked, because it is now redefining, restating, reformulating humanity. What is human and humanity and intelligence? I will talk another occasion about artificial intelligence, how computers are competing with us or we are competing with them. But certainly in the human world, in the world of the animals, we stand out because now we are beginning to recognize that we have many kinds of ways of expressing our creativity, ourself. And we don't need to belittle ourselves and feel sorry for us, as no teacher should look down upon us because we don't have, we have this gift and not that gift, or we have very little, a little bit of everything, but not necessarily a great deal of any one of them. I remember once teaching a man in Canada who was from a workers' safety insurance board, and he was about 54 years old, and I was teaching him English. He was helping him to learn English a bit. So, and suddenly he starts crying. And he's a 54-year-old man, a very tall man, 6'4", a very impressive looking, very handsome man. And I said, what happened to you, Michael? Why are you crying? He says, oh my God, he says, I never learned how to write. And when I was in school, they used to put a dunce cap on my head and put me in one corner, and everybody used to laugh at me because I didn't know how to write. And I said that, and he says, now it has gone so many years and it still stays with me. Anytime anybody asks me to write, and that's what I think of. So that way of looking at a person that because he does not have that gift, and therefore he's an idiot, a stupid person. And you carry that, that notion in your head for a long time. Now, let me quickly, I have 2 or 3 minutes here. Last year I was at a conference in East India, in Orissa, state of Orissa, and there is a lot of tribal people there. India has more tribal people than any other parts of the world, 100 million people out of a population of 1.2 billion. And I saw this woman, tribal woman, and she, from many points of view, she is sort of at the end, the marginalized in the society, from the main society. But when I saw her art, I was deeply touched by it. Look at the work she has created. And this is a work of these women and her members of the family. And this kind of work is now, you see many airports in India, big hangings, part of pillowcases, part of wallpapers, and many other decorations, and kind of work done over the centuries by these people. And I said, this is extraordinary. And how come it has never been recognized properly? And because they're just so marginalized, as though, well, they are nothing, they are not educated, they can't do this, they can't do this, not recognizing that, well, there may be something else they can do. And then I saw some other artists are doing this. And I deeply touched by the symbolism, by the complexity of the structure, by what it might allude to, some of the mythic images in it. And if there was a Carl Jung, he would see incredible symbols in it, and so on. So I felt, wow, there is so much in every human being if one can learn how to recognize it. And I quote, finish on this, my talk. This is a remark by one of the great art historians, Ananda Kumar Swami. He said, an artist is not a special kind of man. Every man is a special kind of artist. Every man is a special kind of artist. And this picture, you will recognize Mona Lisa. My daughter in India, she's in India these days, she said, this is my new picture on the Facebook. Okay. So thank you so much. I am there in the tea room from 3:30 to 4:30. If anybody wishes to continue conversation, I'm more than happy to.